We're entering a period now of the book that actually gets quite dark. I read a little ahead to see what it was going to come up, and I can see that there was a turning point here. So hold on. 12th letter, 15th of April. Hello, friends. Sometimes I wonder if I can stay positive for another 6 months. Sometimes I despair at the injustice of my situation, but then I choose to remind myself that I'm here because the Lord has placed me here for a purpose, and I will fulfill that purpose. It's the regular humiliations of being put in my place that are painful. Then I remind myself of John Bevere's teachings on submission. It's hard. It helped when one of the girls said, well, we are criminals and this is the price we pay. I'm reminded of being a helpless schoolgirl under the authority of teachers who alternately joke and then threaten. Just as you relax, you cross some unwritten boundary and get snapped at. I hate that feeling of powerlessness. And, it's funny, it wasn't until I went to Teachers College that I realised that my 6th grade teacher was actually abusive, that what she had done to many of us, including myself, was absolutely damaging, and it was verbal abuse. And I heard that she eventually got sacked, but I didn't have the words as an 11-year-old. I didn't have the words or the thought processes to recognise that what she was doing was actually not right. So she kept doing it, and until sufficient kids had breakdowns and their parents complained. And it wasn't until I had a breakdown at home, not able to do my maths, that when my mum said, just ask the teacher for help, and I got hysterical because she was so frightening and intimidating and bullying, that my mother went to the school and had words with her. And in Mum's words, she said, I wasn't a Christian then and I tore strips off her. And suddenly from then on, I was Pussy Willow. I was the favourite and treated that way. It's just psycho, and you're at their mercy. And this was very much like that. Oh, my goodness. Okay. It must be how many Indigenous people feel, or perhaps those who, by poverty or handicap, must rely on the grace of arbitrary authority. No wonder God is passionate about defending the poor and dispossessed. He knows human nature can't be trusted to do so. I think about the property boom differently now. So many bought-up properties in low-income areas increased the rent, and poorer families were driven further out. Then some of these investors shamelessly boast of God's blessing on their lives. Makes you wonder. Justin and I were probably too soft on our tenants in the sense that when I say too soft, I don't mean that to sound like we were in authority, but we were very giving and generous with our tenants. We cared about them as families. Each Christmas we bought a gift and let them know they were appreciated. One couple wrote us a reference for future tenants when they left. That's how we were. And the abuse of authority is incredibly. It's a serious thing. It's a terrible sin. Jesus said, "You cause one of these little ones to stumble. It's better that a millstone be tied around your neck and you be thrown into the river than stand before God and answer for it," because it's just so wrong. And it's not just talking about children. We often think of it as being, if you cause one of these children to go off track. But if you misuse, we talk about physical abuse, mental abuse, verbal abuse, spiritual abuse is just as serious, because if your behavior as a leader causes someone to walk away from God, I wouldn't want to be in your shoes. I really wouldn't, because spiritual abuse is still kept under the covers. People don't talk about it. And people like me often won't talk about it because, we might not get invited to speak somewhere, because, much better to be like John Bevere and speak about submitting to authority than questioning or challenging it. Better to just quietly pray and let God deal with it than actually deal with it. But I'm thinking that God expects us to defend the weak and speak up for righteousness, and there's a risk to pay. There's a risk in doing that. Anyway, that's that. That wasn't in my book. That's just something that I've been drawn to recently. Trouble is, most abusers don't believe they are abusers. They just think they're right. And I guess maybe they think that the end justifies the means. Yeah, well, it doesn't. Anyway, my life is still much better than most. This is me writing in prison. My life is better than most. I have a wonderful husband, a supportive family, and a sense of destiny. Yeah, I still had a sense of destiny in prison. There is purpose in my life. This morning I spent time in the Word, waiting on the Lord. I went to work with a sense of joy and peace. 12 of us were bussed out to Warwick on Monday, 30th of March, to do community work. Moving is unsettling. Along with a different bed, you have different people around you with all their hang-ups and attitudes. I guess it's like going on camp with a bunch of psychos and dysfunctional people and all that kind of stuff. And yeah, it's great fun. It was good to have a change, though. One lady was particularly bitchy and bossy, and I was ready to say to her, look, I'll ignore what I've heard about you if you do the same for me. Fortunately, I chose to pray for her instead. As always, when I do what I know is right, instead of what I'd like, civility improved. So just remind yourself, Trish, you do pray for those people who are just horrible. Day 1. For the first day, we worked sorting out clothes at a St. Vincent de Paul warehouse. The volunteers there are very welcoming. It's a warehouse where we sort out donated second-hand clothes. Day 2. We cleaned up the showgrounds where this weekend's International Polo Cross Championships will be held. I cleaned cobwebs down from a large shed and surveyed the filthy floor. Never one to exert unnecessary energy, I thought, why sweep when you can blow? And I employed my best leaf-blowing techniques with a leaf blower to chase dirt and grass clippings out the roller doors. Much of it blew up and back into my hair and through my clothes, but it was fun and more satisfying than using a broom. Day 3. I managed to get on the list of girls for the St. Vincent de Paul retail shop. At last, my field, sales and marketing. These I do know how to do. I'm not allowed to talk to the customers. But how can we answer their but we can answer their queries by directing them to the staff. So we're not allowed to talk to anyone. It sounds simple enough, wouldn't you think? So while I rearranged the books, a gentleman asked me about an author. And before he knew it, he was happily purchasing several books by my favourite authors. And I ask you, who can stay silent with Jeffrey Archer's Not a Penny More, Not a Penny Less, shouting from the shelf? Books, my place of comfort. In the afternoon, I moved to the toy section and regrouped them in colours and styles. Somehow, 2 brightly coloured educational pieces found their way to the counter in the arms of a middle-aged lady. The satisfaction I felt was absurd. Not being allowed to talk to the public can be awkward, but we can't be rude, can we? I remember waiting at the train station last week after working at the cemetery for the return trip to Albion, and a lady with her arm in a sling asked me to help her locate the ticket machine. So I took her over to it. I felt uncomfortable. Remember, we're not allowed to talk to anyone. Then I had to work out her fare for her. And finally, I nearly fainted when she flipped open her wallet and asked me to take the money out for her. My eyes drifted up to the security cameras as I warily reached in past the $20 note and $10 notes to fish out the required coins. Phew. The first thing I did upon returning to the Albion House was report what happened. The Department of Corrections sometimes actually puts dummy travellers on the trains to see if we will talk to them. That's your taxpayer dollars at work. How am I going? Okay. We might finish it there. We'll split that. There's a bit more to say about Warwick, which is a couple of hours west of Brisbane, where we were doing some work. And yeah, I must say that polo cross place, I don't remember if I mentioned it there, but there were horses, polo cross horses out there that I was able to go up to some of the people with the horses and just ask them if I could maybe give them a pet. And today I get to go horse riding later on. It's yeah, so there was like sublimely beautiful and wonderful experiences, and then just crushing, lonely, dark, isolated times. And yet, yes, it's true that God met me in both. Yeah, pray for your enemies. It's a good reminder. But you've also got to know when to stand up for something that's not quite right. Otherwise, that's how controlling leaders can slide into toxicity and abuse. And that's how cults form, because everybody just goes along. And yes, there's a place to pray and trust God and see him move. But sometimes there's time. You've got to have the discernment to know when and how to speak up. And whichever you do, there'll be a price to pay. So you've got to be brave. All right, bless you heaps, and I'll talk to you again tomorrow. If I don't do another live today when I'm out with the horse, I might not be able to resist doing that. Okay, bless you. Bye.